is a pretty funny character to me. Despite her being probably one of the most beloved characters within the fandom, she's also one of the most controversial, with people arguing about everything from whether or not her motivations make sense, to whether or not her death was well written, to whether or not she should have been included in the series to begin with. However, I'd like to argue that not only is Doll necessary to the story of the series, but she also, in general, does a lot more heavy lifting for the story than many people give her credit for. So here, I'm going to analyze how Doll is basically the backbone of Murder Drone's entire story and how more people need to respect her for that. If there's anything you can describe Doll's character as, it's tragic. She was once a normal teenager living a normal teenage life, only to have her parents taken from her in a cruel twist of fate and the resulting trauma to turn her into a monster. She was forced to drink the oil of her fellow workers to survive, which led to her becoming a serial killer and cannibal, slowly chipping away at her conscience until she became too selfish enough to care about anyone but herself. Despite this, she's still capable of selflessness, such as when she shows remorse towards Uzi in episode 6, and generally seems to empathize with her struggles with the Solver. Despite this, her selfishness ultimately wins out, as she abandons and sabotages Uzi's progress at every turn, even attempting to kill her by setting the Sentinels loose on her and the rest of the main cast, and her actions ultimately led to her tragic death at the hands of Sin. What I like the most about Doll is that she's a truly morally gray character. She can heartlessly murder her own classmates to advance her goals, while simultaneously feeling sympathy for Uzi and her struggles with the Solver. She's equal parts good and bad, and I think it's a shame that more people don't realize this and instead try to lump her into being either a hero or a villain when they fail to understand that she's both. She's both a villain and a victim. She's suffered, but that doesn't excuse the suffering she's caused others. Ultimately, Doll is a character who ruined her life by obsessing over accomplishing her own goals and dug her own grave so deep to the point she felt she was in too far to climb out and eventually died in the hole she dug. She's an incredibly layered and tragic character, and her existence not only supports the story on a technical level, but also helps to build up and develop themes that would have fallen flat otherwise. Much like the other characters in the story, Doll is an incredibly proactive character. She doesn't sit around and wait for things to go her way, but instead gets up and does what she wants when she wants, and this reluctance to accept no for an answer is what leads to Doll's existence and actions, doing a lot of heavy lifting for the story post episode 3. In episode 3, Doll's main goal is to kill V so she can avenge her parents, and to accomplish this, she has to lure V into the bunker with the promise of easy prey. Doing this causes V to break out of her chains and run away to the bunker, with N chasing her to prevent her from committing a massacre, which results in him reuniting with Uzi. And at the end of the episode, the trio learn about the existence of Cabin Fever Labs through Yiva's ID card, and Doll unintentionally activates Uzi's solver, which leads to the introduction of arguably the most important location in the entire series, and the solver becoming a fully fledged antagonist. Without Doll's existence, or at the very least, without her existence as an antagonist, these things never would have happened. The gang never would have explored Cabin Fever Labs, Uzi never would have activated her solver, and N and Uzi never would have reunited when they did, meaning that episodes 4 through 8 would have been radically different, assuming they even happened at all. At a glance, Murder Drones seems to be a pretty simple story. Cute robots kill each other for reasons. However, when you look at the series more closely, you begin to realize that it, intentionally or not, says a lot of things about relationships, togetherness, and teamwork. The characters in this series are defined by their relationships. Uzi's strained relationship with Khan, V's toxic relationship with N, and Uzi's close knit relationship with each other, and Doll's vengeful relationship with V. The series also contains themes of teamwork and togetherness, as the main three are ultimately able to defeat the Solver by working together to fight it, and even things such as Khan reuniting with Nori and Lizzie finding a friend in V. However, there's one character who stays single throughout the entire series: Doll. Doll was always going alone, even when she had the opportunity to join Uzi and V. Doll was given chances to change, yet rejected them, and this led to her death, as opposed to the other characters who not just survived, but thrived in their new relationships. Doll's thematic purpose is to be an example of what can happen to someone when they choose to reject help, when they choose to go it alone and do their own thing despite assistance being an option. She provides an example of what not to do. She's a warning against selfishness and isolation. Doll also serves a second thematic purpose: to be a foil to Uzi. Doll and Uzi have a lot of similarities. Both of them lost parents to the disassembly drones and inherited an active solver from their mothers. Admittedly, Doll's situation was worse as she lost both of her parents relatively recently and seems to have had a happy upbringing, whereas Uzi lost her mother at an incredibly young age, which led to her father neglecting her, but the similarity is still there, and both of their respective losses led to them developing an obsession with vengeance. Doll wanted to kill V to avenge her parents, and Uzi wanted to destroy disassembly drones and the human race. While Uzi's goal was much more broad, and she said that she wanted to do it to make Copper 9 safe for workers and not necessarily to avenge her mom, you can't tell me Nori's death and the impacts of that didn't somewhat influence this decision. After all, she grew up never getting to meet her mother. As far as she knew, all she would ever learn about Nori was what her dad told her. However, even if their goals and circumstances were different, they both shared the theme of wanting revenge. Despite this, one thing separated them: Uzi had friends, whereas Doll didn't. Uzi's friendship with N gave her a support system and a healthy outlet to cope with her problems, thus causing her to lose her vengeful desires and focus on finding her own happiness. Doll, on the other hand, had no one. Sure, she was friends with Lizzie, but based on how quick she was to abandon her, I doubt the relationship meant much. Doll and Uzi are two sides of the same coin, one showing how a positive relationship can help a person, and the other showing how a lack of positive relationship can harm a person. If Doll had a proper support system and was given the opportunity to naturally grieve, I doubt she would have done any of what she did. And the thing is, she could have gotten the support system in the form of the main cast. Doll had plenty of opportunities to join Uzi N and V in their endeavors to defeat the Solver, yet she abandoned and sabotaged them at every turn, and she had no reason to leave them behind. It wasn't like her search was a timed trial and the three would have slowed her down, and it was never implied the patch could only be used on a single drone, so it's not even like she would have been forced to choose between healing herself and healing Uzi. Despite this, I've seen some people argue that making Doll join the main cast would have been a bad idea, as it would have forced Doll to forgive V. While I do agree that if Doll forgave V, it would be because she wants to and not because the narrative forced her to, I don't think Doll joining the trio would necessarily mean that she had to forgive V. Doll could have very easily joined the gang out of necessity and left them once she got what she wanted. She didn't have to develop any emotional attachment or connection to them, and she definitely didn't have to forgive V. Heck, they could have even just agreed to a temporary truce until they both got what they wanted. No direct collaboration needed. Uzi, on the other hand, she grew up socially isolated and was raised to believe that she wasn't like the other girls. Her classmates ostracized and bullied her, and her emotionally distant dad didn't do anything to even try to help. However, when she meets N, she gets that emotional support she's been missing her entire life. N respects her, takes her feelings seriously, and makes her feel better when she's hurt, causing her to change and become much less closed off and guarded. Doll is meant to be a dark mirror to Uzi, a glimpse into where a protagonist's story could have gone and how it could have ended had she continued on the path she set out for herself in the pilot, as opposed to changing gears and seeking connection as opposed to revenge. Pardon my cringe, but Doll is the shadow to Uzi's Sonic, the nightmare moon to her Princess Luna, a darker version of who she could have become. Morally gray characters are hard to get right. However, when they're written well, they can easily become some of the greatest characters in any story, and Doll is no exception, as she's easily one of my favorite characters within the entire show. Anyway, that's all from me. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all next time.